20 something. I don't even know anymore. When we keep going and going, like Ant always says, right?
Going, we're
So
rolling.
yeah, yeah. So today we got Mr. David Kelly on. David, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, man?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. Let's see. Right now, I've got about 35 species of herps that I've been breeding. I got into reptiles when I was a little kid. It's a typical story. Um, Dad showed me Jurassic Park, and I was like, "That's exactly what I want." And you quickly find out you can't have a T-Rex, so the iguana becomes the next best thing, and then your
Right.
dad learns how big an iguana gets, so then the day gecko becomes the next best thing, and then as a 7-year-old, you kill the day gecko and have to learn a lesson, and you get a leopard gecko, and it takes off from there. So
There you go.
I basically had reptiles off and on ever since, and my dad helped me out when I was a kid, and then at 16, I started building my own collection, and it's just been
Nice.
with me basically ever since.
Very nice.
Cool. All right. So, what does your current collection look like right now?
Not as many geckos as it used to. I used to have a ton of different gecko species, and living in Kansas, the land of extremes, I wanted animals that were highly adaptable to the heat, or if they're
Mm,
in my basement, I wanted them to be able to take it as cold as possible. So I've got two herp rooms, one upstairs that gets much hotter, my basement that goes from 68 degrees down to 33 degrees. So I just split my collection up between the two and got animals that were a little more adaptable. And I've got a lot of
nice.
tortoises. I've got a lot of salamanders. Let's see, six turtle species. I think I've got eight salamander species. Let's see, I've got eight or nine lizard species, and the rest are all snakes. I
Awesome.
I can't just do one thing. I've got to do a little bit of everything. Frogs were the only thing I'm just not super into. I've got a fire-bellied toad colony, but that's that's it.
Cool,
Gotcha.
man. Very
Oh
cool.
yeah. All right. Yeah. So we're actually here today. We're going to be talking about Homophilus fasciata, the Tanzanian velvet gecko. Uh, so, can you tell us about a little bit about their natural habitat and how does that kind of influence their care in captivity for us?
Sure. It's my understanding, because I haven't been there, but just reading the literature, looking up iNaturalist and Google Maps, it's dry forest, bordering on tropical in some parts. Um, Basically, their secret, based on their habitat, is heat and with a slight winter cooling at nighttime only. If you look at where they're from, the daytime highs can be in the 90s, hundreds, and then during their cool season, it can get as low as 50 degrees at night in there.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah. So I, learning this, I already was a big proponent of cooling animals to begin with. I think we keep our animals way too hot in captivity across the board. So I really I lucked into it, breeding them in the first time. I had diamond pythons I was cooling. I just put them on the same shelf, and like come January one year, I just saw my female lay an egg. Thought I collected them all, and then a couple months later, I just saw a baby that had escaped and shot across my ceiling. Um, really, that's the biggest thing, is that they are a species of extreme hot and then
Hmm.
cool at nighttime. Um, of course, they've got, you guys have seen the pictures of them, those big heads, those big jaws.
Hmm.
Um, I can't find any record of it, but there's got to be something to go on with that. I don't know if they're eating beetles and crushing them,
Hmm.
um, but that bite pressure, man, like for a gecko that's
I've
only
heard
four
about
inches
that.
long, I've got I mean, when I've got scars, but I mean, they're like a quarter of an inch. I mean, it's
Yeah.
nothing really, but I mean, they bite, and when they bite, they lock on. You try to pull them off, they just bite harder, and you can actually see their eyes like indenting in their skull as they begin to flex their jaw and just lock on.
Sounds
Um,
like a tokay.
yeah, that's right.
A little mini version.
I can only imagine they're either using it to crush beetles,
Hmm.
or they're using it as a territorial display.
Hmm.
But we can go into that later, but I've got some thoughts about keeping them in colonies and some of the things I've noticed. But to answer
Absolutely.
your question, I'm kind of rambling here.
Oh,
Yeah,
good, 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 man. That's it. We want the breeder and the keeper, the master, to just spill the beans, man. Tell us everything. We're hosts, but we're here to learn too. So whatever you're not rambling, never. So you go off on something, literally, please entertain us.
Oh, excellent! That's the best thing I've ever heard.
There you go. Absolutely.
yeah.
So,
Go
I
ahead, man.
definitely will say, I know some guys have said that they can get them eating dubia roaches. I find them to be a very visual predator. I've never had good luck with it. I'll put a cup in there and I'll just watch those dubias sit there for
Mhm.
a very long
You
time.
mean like some movement, right?
I throw some banded
Okay.
crickets in there and those things are on it.
Yeah.
They're not like a eublepharid that kind of like slowly
Mm.
slugs its way over and kind of gobbles up its dubia roaches.
yeah.
Um, they definitely, you know, reading about where they come from, it seems like they're living under bark on the trees. So they very much like that dark crevice during the daytime. I try to give them cork bark tubes that are as tight as possible that they can just jam themselves in. Um, and they do experience a kind of the typical color change for a gecko. During the day, they're much darker. During the nighttime, they turn into this okay, bright silver color with the kind of dark charcoal gray bandings. They almost look directly like tree bark when they're inside those cork tubes. There's times when
Cool.
Nice.
I can't actually see them without like a high powered flashlight to kind of see what's in there.
Nice.
Cool. How much do these guys differ? Or I don't know much about either species, but are they related to the Australian velvet geckos at all, or
No,
anything? They're not.
they're not. They're actually their
Okay.
closest relatives are the Blazodactylus species from Madagascar, which
Okay.
are
Really?
yeah, they're fantastic animals too. I
Hmm.
used to breed Bovini, and then they've got the
Okay.
bite pressure. They definitely share that.
Awesome.
And then their next closest relative, if I'm not taxonomy has changed since I last looked into this. I apologize, taxonomy nerds. I believe they are then closely related to the fish-scaled geckos of all
Okay.
things on Madagascar.
Really?
Hmm.
Yes. Um,
Damn.
so um, it, that's sort of why you brought up a good point about the Australian velvet geckos.
Hmm.
Uh, I like to try to tell people I like to use scientific names as much as possible because at one time in my hobby, I was taking care of velvet geckos, velvet geckos, and velvet geckos. Three genera, four species, and that kind of gets people to go like, oh, that makes a little bit of sense when you put it that way.
yeah.
Yeah, that's how it kind of happened today. I was talking to my buddy, and he just got into the Australian velvet geckos, right? So he was telling me about them all week, and I was like, dude, we're doing an episode tonight, man, velvet geckos, and I couldn't pronounce, the scientific name, so I sent it to him. He was like, yeah, no, those are the African ones. He's like, I keep the Australians. I was like, well, excuse me, like, all right. But
And those are phenomenal animals too. I mean, he's gonna have a great
yeah,
time. That's
they just got him too. Yeah,
my biggest regret was getting rid of my Australian velvet geckos. I can't
I
tell
feel
you
the
really.
how.
same way. Yeah, I
Yep.
feel the same way
Yeah.
right now. You know?
But
So with them, right? What kind of enclosures are we talking about for from a baby into your breeding setup, and we can go into that colony talk as well of how big of an enclosure you would like to set up for something like that.
I like to do babies in either fruit fly cups with lids,
Okay.
um, and I keep it as basic as possible. A couple cork bark slabs, and then like a mix of topsoil and sand, just a little tiny thing at the bottom, maybe quarter of an inch. Um, but I decided to play around this year with keeping them in a group just to kind of see what they do. Just a lot of, I didn't want to buy more cork bark, so I literally just used egg crate. We had chickens. We had a bunch of extra egg crate. I just cut them up, kind of layered them in there, and they just each individually took a little spot of that egg crate, made a little place for themselves, and then just kind of would hang out and ambush there. So they
It's
seem to
cool.
get along fairly well as babies. Um, but I did notice some tail nipping, so that's something that you got to be aware. But they're not like killing each other. They're not being overly aggressive. Um, and then for my adults, I for many years successfully kept pairs in 12 by 12 by 18 exoteras. No problem with it. I stand by to this day. Um, but I tried to add a second female into that group this year, and or sorry, I raised them together, put them in the cage at the same time, and I have noticed the one female is always consistently getting her tail bit off by one of them. I'm guessing the
Okay.
female.
Okay.
So I have tried in that enclosure just jamming as much cork to the point at one point I couldn't even like see anything in there. Like I'd have to deconstruct the entire cage to actually like sand sift the substrate, and it seemed like no matter what was going on, that animal is getting its tail bit off every time it regens. So um, now I'm going to try to go to a bigger enclosure and jam it full again and see what happens. But uh, it seems that there's some sort of female on female territoriality going on there
Okay.
that
It wouldn't be unique, you know. It wouldn't. It's pretty popular thing from what I gather. So we were just talking. Who were we talking? Oh, tokays too. Like people say they have great success raising them in colonies, and then other keepers will say that one female will go out of her way to destroy the other female's eggs. Like never the male, but the female versus female. I've heard it with Leachianus. I've heard it with a few species over the years. But you'd think in the wild, I guess, like maybe not in Tanzania, but an habitable tree isn't is not as easy to come by as you would think, and they would be multiple geckos in one tree and maybe one male. And I mean, I get the logic. I mean, it's an ambiguous topic, I suppose, but you'd be the one to know, not me.
well, and I'm figuring it out just as much as anybody
Mm,
else because I know
that's
the numbers
great.
around these things. Um, and I think to add more to that point, I'm thinking to raise them in colonies as well. For all I know, it could be a matter of my numbers being too low, where the aggression
Mm,
can't be spread out, and
mm,
one female is just like, nope, this is my spot, you're out of here, instead of
Okay.
having
Yeah. Yeah.
five or
So
six
maybe just
females that
yeah.
kind of are blanketing
no,
everybody
no, yeah,
so
Okay.
I've
makes
heard
sense.
guys that just throw a bunch in an enclosure, one male, bunch of females, and they're fine. So, um, yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Because I'm actually gonna because I got a 18 18 18 PVC that I'm about to go and clean out here in a little bit. And I was gonna put like a 1.3 in there, see if I can see if that will work out for them, see if that's enough space. Like you said, slabs, tubes. What about like doing? Do you do like a bioactive for them, or you just kind of uh, breeder breeder wise, just keep it as simple as possible?
I just do a mix of mulch, topsoil, organic topsoil, and sand. I don't do bioactive, not necessarily because I disagree with it or anything. They're just a
Mm-hmm.
very dry weather animal. They don't like a lot
Okay,
of moisture.
gotcha.
Um, and then also, I'm digging up eggs. So I'm just going to destroy it all anyway.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, I have mostly because like I scatter them all over the enclosure. So I used to have a nice bioactive decorated up tank that I would just kind of try to keep the Sansevieria alive in and make it look nice. And I would just rip it up digging eggs because I would get so excited when I saw my females emptied out. But I was like, all right, I'll just keep hatching them out. Somebody else can do the bioactive and really enjoy it. But
Uh,
All right. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's a different ball game. No, I was just gonna say it's a different ball game. I do it myself. I built these crazy live vivariums for my chihuahuas and stuff, and other species that I want to reproduce. But you got to take it in consideration when you're breeding them. That's absolutely what's happening. They're laying eggs, and me as the keeper is on a mission to find them eggs. Everything that's in the way aesthetically isn't serving me any purpose, to just to get in the way. It's something I'm going to disturb. It can never really thrive if I'm in there every couple months uprooting plants. I mean, nothing will ever establish. So I do still have a few, but the more time goes on, the more I am coming to the realization that a lot of other people have told me that I got to learn the hard way. And breeder setup is different than a keeper setup. Like,
that's right.
Yeah.
I had this whole notion I'm going to keep my breeding pairs of Leachianus in these big old, 2x4 planted things. And then I'm like looking at the Jehovah's. I'm like, is there anything like this? This is going to be hell trying to get these damn eggs. Like what am I supposed to do? It doesn't make sense, So totally understandable, man. The guy that's trying to reproduce them is definitely going to set them up differently than somebody that just has the one pair that may reproduce. It is what it is, and I hope people understand that too. There's nothing wrong with someone that doesn't run a full bio setup. You're not harming a species or doing anything cruel to a species by not keeping them in these fully planted things. Sometimes it's actually for the better of the animal to not go and rip and disturb their environment up like crazy, just looking for eggs. And sometimes you don't find them, like there's a clash of generations and eras of keeping, if you will, on the forefront of the hobby right now, right? Like everybody's pro bioactive, and there's absolutely a time and a place. There
Oh
is,
yeah,
but people
definitely.
have to come around to see that the guys you're getting your animals from, the guys that are doing the work to reproduce these things, they're just a different ball game. Like you can't.
Yeah,
It's just different, man. So I
yeah,
totally understand it.
especially when you're producing at a higher volume than
Yeah,
most people
man.
would. Like you said, pet keepers versus breeders. Breeders, like you said, they're
Absolutely.
producing at high volume. Pet keepers, you might have one or two, so you could
Hmm.
whatever your wildest imagination is, you can do that stuff, right?
Yep.
Uh, I mean, and there might be some things that like I said, like the Europlatus, right? I said, me and Ant, we both got Europlatus. I know when I actually start breeding those, I'm probably going to end up doing bioactive just for the sake of their humidity requirements, temp require all that stuff to help you know help everything in that cage, right? But for like my chauffeurs, they're not getting bioactive. Uh, my chihuahuas don't like chihuahuas are like semi bioactive just because I throw in mealworms, super worms. There's the beetles, so I do have some sort of a little bioactive. Oh, and on a note too, super worms will eat those eggs.
Oh,
I did have a super worm go through one of my chihuahua eggs not too long ago. That thing was empty. I was like, holy shit. So
It always amazes me when people say they don't. I'm like, I had, I keep my bearded dragons in an arid bioactive tank. I have absolutely watched freaking superworms savage a clutch of eggs, man. Like if
yeah,
people say, "Oh, they don't disturb my things," I'm like, "All right, well, listen to each their own, man. I learned everything in life the hard way. Rock out, you know."
right.
man, when I first got my pancake tortoises, I did this big old like flat
Awesome
rocks.
too, man.
They're
Awesome.
they're fantastic animals, and I
Mhm.
made this. It wasn't a fantastic looking thing, but it was like a cliffside, and I had all this cool like setup. And then my friend, well, I didn't ask his permission to use his name, so I won't. But I was like, hey, what's your success? How do you do it? He's like, well, I keep them in a 40-gallon aquarium with a light bulb and a cereal box, and you hide them. And he gets eggs more than I've ever seen. Like, and they're all fertile and they're all great. And I was like, huh. He's like, yeah, my back never hurts because I'm not picking up rocks and I can find the eggs. The animals don't like, and this is not a gecko thing, but tortoises are. Sorry, tortoise lovers. I love tortoises. They're dumb. They will find a way to hurt themselves. I wish this was the
No.
case. Too. Then you just take that entire risk out there because you throw them in a box and they will find a way to do something stupid. So, anyways, yes, I'm with you. Sometimes being simple is just the way to go. And then there's other
Yeah.
things. I've got an alligator lizard colony in a bioactive vivarium right now.
Very cool.
They're the northwestern alligator lizards that if they give birth, I'll just see a baby run around and then boom, I can just pick it up and the adults go back to
Hmm.
doing their thing.
I
So I'm
yeah,
with you. You got to
I
know
did see
when
that
to.
on your IG showing like the baby alligator lizard coming
That's
out of
awesome, man.
that thin, what is it called?
Egg sack.
Oh,
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah, exact. Yeah. Oh, that was super cool. I was like, holy shit, that is dope, man.
Dude, I was actually hosting some. Actually, that's who I was with this morning that kind of ruined the initial plans. My buddy Joey, who's a herper with me, we had a terrible herping season, and we
mm.
uh, we were like, oh, let's go look for hognose this morning, and that's when you messaged me. You're like, hey, you still ready for the podcast? I was like, oh crap! Like, I gotta like. I haven't seen Joey all summer. I want to do this podcast. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. We were hosting them for dinner, and he wanted to see my collection. He's like, "Hey man, what's this jelly bean thing in your
Wow.
alligator enclosure?" I was like, "What?" I walk over there, and that's when I took the video of it, like wriggling out and bursting through. It was one of my top
It's
10
awesome.
moments, and we were all blown away. But
Yeah,
Do they
that's
typically
cool.
lay them like that? Do they typically lay the egg sac and then it comes out, or does it usually hatch inside and it does, right? How does it normally work?
so with the northwestern alligator lizards, there's an example of a species that's gone to a colder climate. So rather than lay eggs, they're
Mm-hmm.
basically, and you'll see this with things like boa constrictors and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone toward basically retaining the egg inside of them, losing the shell, and just having an extended. It's not a gestation period, so to speak, because it's not true viviparity. But they just drop that little egg sac. The baby will wriggle out really quick, and then it's gone. I mean, you almost
Amazing.
never see it. It's truly one of those like
Yeah.
that baby is deposited, it's out. Yeah, so to see it was
Mm-hmm.
one in a lifetime chance. I don't think
Yeah,
I've
I
Yeah,
bet.
yeah.
I've seen like chameleons, but almost the sac is almost busting as they're coming out,
yeah.
type of thing. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, that's super super cool, man. Very cool.
Oh yeah. So
Hey, I
what
got a
kind of
question real quick.
oh, go
Hold
ahead.
on, let me ask this question. This is just an offbeat question since we were talking about the turtles, the tortoises rather. And maybe you may know this, but this has been on my mind for the last like 4 days. I was watching a podcast the other day and they were talking about tortoises, right? This guy has a pen of tortoises outside, and he said that they take every once in a while, he takes a frozen rat and feeds a frozen rat to a tortoise. What the hell kind of tortoises are these?
So you'll be surprised. A lot of tortoises will eat protein. It's all like a hubris.
What?
Now that being said, that is like they need to barely have protein. It is not something you just repeatedly can do. That's a
Huh.
great way to get gout and also build up bladder stones, uric acid stones inside of them. They're very
Mm.
Oh
that.
damn.
Now he said
But
once in a while, but I thought I misheard him. I'm like, I was listening to a podcast, and I listened to so many I can't remember. I'm like, what the hell? No way. He's like, yeah, he throws a giant rat into his colony of something tortoises. I was like, I got to look into this, and I didn't. And you brought up tortoises. I'm like, you might know this. That's cool.
yeah, I heard a story once about sulcatas, a sulcata rather, that had learned that if it stood up tall when it was hot and sunny, if a bird came underneath it, it would just drop its weight, crush the bird, and then
That
back
is
up and eat the bird.
awesome.
So occasionally they will do that, but generally
Wow.
they're all still grazers and eating grass. But
Wow. I think that's amazing.
Oh yeah,
Huh.
that's
oh, they're
dope,
weird
man.
animals.
That's cool, man. All right, back to the topic, Jason. I'm sorry. I had to ask.
No, you're all good. No, I was gonna ask. So what kind of temperature gradients are we looking for these?
So during the summertime and springtime, I'm going warm. Their ambient is probably 80, 81. Nighttime 75. We're
Okay. So
now I'm
what
also
about
giving
like a
them a
hot spot?
basking spot
Yeah.
of 95 to 100 degrees. One of those
Okay.
puck lights.
Okay.
They don't sell them anymore, but those little under the cabinet puck lights you could buy at Home Depot. Man, I bought a bunch of those back in the day, and those were a
Yeah, I bought a
lifesaver.
bunch of halogen 25 waters from like Home Depot and everything because I use like a lot of the mini domes.
Mhm.
So those are just perfect, and I have everything on dimmers already. So oh
Exactly.
yeah, nice.
So I just have that set up at one of the parts of the cork tubes, and they almost never seem bothered by temperature. I've never seen them trying to get away from it.
Okay.
So, I mean, in all honesty, I got to say, put this out there. It basically takes a bullet or a brick to kill these things. Like, I've never met a hardier gecko.
Damn.
So, I mean, if you can give them that hot summertime temperature, and then in the wintertime, you're going to keep everything the same until the nighttime, let them get down to the
Much
60s,
more
let them get
draw.
down to the 50s, but then let them get back warmer during the day, and
Okay.
you're set.
Interesting.
So we're talking like a soft cool
Yeah, yeah,
or
and
okay.
like I'll feed them during it. I don't change
Okay.
anything other than they're going to eat a little bit less. Um, if our house is super poorly insulated, and I kind of like it for this room because it does kind of get those temperature swings. If it's going to get really cold, and we're thinking that room might dip into the 40s, even high 30s, I might get a little weirded out and
Mm,
um, check on them. But so long as it's in the 50s at night, I'm fine.
Okay.
cool. Are these guys strictly nocturnal? Are they diurnal? What are these? When are these guys most active?
I've occasionally
Crepuscular?
seen one basking.
Really? That's why it
But I
made me
mean,
ask. If you have,
we're talking barely. Like I'm seeing a
mm,
head out for a second, and then the minute it
mm,
sees me, it just down into the tube and it's gone.
mm,
I mostly see them nocturnal, and they will come out right as the lights come off. I mean, they are waiting for
Nice.
that.
They're ready for it.
I'm sure if it was a natural like timer that's kind of slowly dimming the lights, we would start seeing some crepuscular behavior. But with
Yeah.
the artificial on and off system,
Yeah.
it's nocturnal in captivity. They don't want
Yeah.
to just so long as it's dark, they're there.
Okay. So what was so with them? Because I know like when I try to feed like my Eurycletus, if it's the lights are on, my Eurycletus doesn't come out for nothing. So what about them? Do they like if you start feeding them during the daytime, will they actually come out to start eating, or were they like, no, we're gonna wait and see if the lights are off, then we'll come out?
No, the minute the lights come out, they're out hunting. Like
Okay.
I can throw food in at noon, so that's some warmth and some time to kind of get that daytime temp, and they'll just wait. They'll just sit there.
Okay.
But the minute those lights are off, they're all out. Babies, adults. Um, my girlfriend has some shrimp tanks and isopods in the same room, and you know, if I'm out
Cool.
herping, she'll send me pictures of like she loves them because they're just all plastered on the glass, like snagging crickets as they come out. You know, so she gets a big kick out of it, and you'll always see them at nighttime if you're in your room. If you want a basking animal or an daytime animal, just not the one for you.
Yeah.
People just need to be aware of that, but I think most
That's
geckos
awesome.
are kind of
That's awesome information. Yeah. Are you offering UVB at all? I mean, even though that, I mean, what's your stance with UVB in these guys?
maybe this will irritate people. I don't like to use UVB on anything that is not a true out in the sun basking animal. Um, I've taken UVB meters and played around with them. Like literally,
Mm-hmm.
like take it, walk out in the sun, read it. Now walk under like a bush with where there's some light coming through. You're not going to get anything. It is truly microscopic levels of UVB. Uh, again, unpopular, I know, but they're so nocturnal. I'm not going to add more light and more heat on them in our artificial setups.
Yeah.
I
Um,
hear you, dude. I hear you. I
but I've
ordered
never
ones
had.
coming tomorrow, man. That's what I'm saying, Jay. I'm like on this mission to figure out lighting. I was really talking about it. My boss bought it for me. I was talking to him about, like you were saying, with lights being on and off. Like it drives me nuts that we have these lighting systems and all this technology in the world today. And I get there's some companies out there, but we for these animals we care so much about and spend so much money on that we can't figure out lighting. That it's nighttime, day, daytime, night. Like there's no. It's like that can't be normal. Like how would you feel living in? I mean, our lives would be drastically different if we lived like that, right? So I've been on this mission to try to figure it out, figure out a better way. So I brought up this conversation with my boss and UVB and, just all different lighting things. And he was like, well, you should have one. You should have a solar meter. And he bought it. I'm like, oh, thanks, bud. So
Oh,
it's
they're
coming. It's
awesome.
technically here today. So tomorrow I'll be walking around like a weirdo everywhere.
No, and I need to clarify that stance too. Like, if it's an animal like a chuckwalla, throw UVB
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
That
Hell yeah.
it needs it. But a nocturnal gecko that likes to live under bark, where it's just getting
Mm-hmm.
radiant heat hitting the bark and kind of penetrating
Mm-hmm.
through, I worry about things, for example, like eyes.
Mm-hmm.
That spectrum of lighting in a small enclosure is going to be tormenting those animals' eyes over time. Is it going to develop cataracts? Are we
Mm-hmm.
giving an unnatural level of light that is now going to be damaging to that animal? Now, take an animal again like a chuckwalla or just a cougar. Um, I will even say maybe even a king cobra, a racehorse, or a coon whip. I think we've just entered a different ball game with
Yeah.
generally
Yeah.
for nocturnal gecko.
Something that's out seeking the sun, right? Like obviously, but I'm on the same thought process as you, man. I just got into some other, whole rack of different species of animals and new species of geckos, and it just doesn't seem right to me that these things hide during the day. Why? Whether they're like hiding from the sun, right? Like, sure, they've adapted their lives to this nighttime lifestyle, sure, but what's the reason they're hiding from the sun, guys? Like they have these big, crazy eyes, these crazy, cells and cone cells or whatever, that makes them see these crazy things. Like you just want to take a crazy light that's putting off all kinds of ultraviolet rays and just blast it in their face. Like, I got to know for myself. I can't just be listening to Joe Schmo because he said put a UVB on a nocturnal animal. Like, I got to know what's going on a little bit more, man. And it just doesn't seem right. Like you said, it just doesn't. I do it though, unfortunately, because I shouldn't say that is erring on the safe side, because it's probably the wrong move to make. But I offer them just because. Hey, why lie? All the horror stories I hear of things that could possibly be, like with my Europlatus, the thing clearly tries to hide all day. The Sikora tries to hide all day. I put UVB on him. Can I say I've seen him in it? Yeah, he's moved in it, but he's not like my bearded dragon's up under it, perched up, like head up, soaking in the sun. I mean, I think it's something worth it. Exploring more too. They're like perfect. I'm glad to hear someone else say it the way you did. Like, with these eyes, the last thing we'd want to do is harm them, and we take these already sensitive, super bright lights and put them to an animal with probably some of the best vision in the animal kingdom, right? Like some of these gecko species, and we're just going to put these lights in their face, and it's known to be bad for us. Like, don't stare at the sun. Don't put these things. It's like, why would we do it to them?
Sure.
I'm glad I heard someone else say that. Thank you for that, because now it makes me look at it a little different.
And you know what? I could be wrong. We could find in 20 years
that
David Kelly guy, moron. He said, science says.
But it's logic. Logic makes sense. Logic.
I'm gonna run with this until we've explored.
Until someone proves you wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You've never had anything issues with calcium, right? Like, you've never had anything crash on you. You're obviously getting plenty of clutches. None of your females have crashed on you or anything, right?
Only when I changed calcium brands, and I'm not going to name it. I don't want to disparage that brand. I don't know if there was a weird batch, but I switched brands, and I had a female Haemophilus that was amazing. And this was about a decade ago. She was just rocking and rolling, and all of a sudden one day she just went downhill. I was like, "What just happened?" But I was like, "Well, wait a minute. I'm not using my. I will say the brand I do use and I love. It's Mineral. I love Mineral." I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not using Mineral anymore. And went back to Mineral, no problems again. So, and you know what? That's a very small sample size. That could have been an animal that was already having problems.
Yeah.
Wild caught animal back during the days of wild caught Haemophilus. Who knows what else could have been wrong with her? But I like Mineral. I've never had a problem using Mineral. My eggs are giant, healthy calcium sacs and really hard shelled eggs. So I'm
awesome.
Okay. So I was about to ask those questions. You just answered that one. So so I'm guessing are you doing Mineral with the D3 or without the D3?
Without the D3.
Without the D3. Okay.
Yep.
So
sorry, with D3.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was gonna say,
I was gonna say it's like without the D3, but no UVB. No. Okay. So all right,
No.
with
Sorry.
I've actually read that, Jay, with Europlatus, though. I've read that they're so calcium sensitive that if you're offering, even if you're not offering UVB, some article I was reading suggests using non D3 calcium with the smaller Europlatus species, man.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I was herping until midnight last night. Woke 5
You're all
herping,
good.
and my brain is fried.
No, you're all good, man. So with feeding them, right? What kind of feeders are you using? Like you said that they don't like dubias because they don't move. But they do like crickets. What other feeders do you like using for them?
So I love banded crickets. Not only do they not die like a domestic cricket, they are little ricochets and they'll just take off. I still do offer dubia, like my I don't think he's doing geckos anymore, but Clint Reinhardt I sent my original colony to,
Oh, okay.
and I was like, hey man, they don't need dubia, and like the first day he had them, he's like, what about this? And it's one of my females just chowing down on one. Like, what in the world? Like, I've never had one with dubia. So I still offer it to them, but I just do not get that good feeding response. So it's probably something I'm doing. I'll offer super worms occasionally in a dish. Again, not a lot of interest in those. And like occasionally, if my girlfriend gets a colony of isopods that's too heavy and she does not going to sell them, I'll just throw them in a bowl and let them chow down. Again, not a great response, but it's a high calcium prey. I give it a shot. So
I'd imagine they'd be great for the babies living under the bark and whatnot. Imagine
yeah.
Hmm.
What do you know about them? What are they eating in the wild? Do you have any information on what they're predating on out there?
There's not a lot of information.
Really?
If you the papers you'll read will just be like invert parts. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like what invert parts? If anybody has a paper that
Ants.
has information, please send that my way. I'd love to know it. Um, but that's sort of what their head structure. I could only imagine.
Hmm.
That'd be really
Yeah,
cool
yeah,
to know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I keep meaning to, and I never do it, is get some mealworms or superworms, morph those things out into beetles,
yeah.
and I have just never done it. Call it laziness or forgetfulness, but I'd really like to try that and see what the response is
That'd be
like.
cool.
Yeah,
Um,
because you said like the jaws are just so massive that
Mm.
they should be able to break through that hard shell that those beetles have. Uh,
Absolutely.
okay, yeah. Well, I got tons of
Hmm.
beetles, so I could
Interesting.
definitely use
Yeah, give it a
those.
shot. Let me know how it goes here.
Interesting.
So are they really are they fast like kind of like any of the day geckos that live there, or are they kind of like slow and steady up
Oh,
there?
They're like an intermediate. I
Okay.
mean, if one gets out, you want to be running but they're more of like a bolt pause. Bolt
mm.
pause. It's not just a continuous thing like a fan-footed gecko that just like you blink and it teleports. Yeah, I literally had a male fan-footed gecko back about 7 years ago. I opened the cage, it jumped out, it got behind the terrarium. I was like, "Oh, no worries, I got this." I looked back, gone. I never saw that animal again. I have no idea where that
Damn.
animal. I took my room apart, gone. Homophilus are not that way. Homophilus gets behind something, you can kind of shimmy your way through and try to catch them.
Mm.
Use a fly swatter or something to kind of like guide them upward or a stick,
Use a
something.
fishnet.
Mm.
A fishnet, perfect, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's sort of why I like them. I don't have to worry about them just flying out and taking off. Um,
Okay.
and
Cool.
on the and then combined with their hardiness, I did have one baby escape me this year that I had no idea escaped. I foolishly opened the cage at like 2 a.m. after herping to throw some crickets in, and I was like, yeah, well, I think they're all in there. They're probably good. Like 2 months later, my girlfriend's like, hey, what is this? And it was just a velvet gecko living on her plant rack in there, and it was fat and healthy looking. I was like, oh, sweet.
It's awesome.
I'll just take that.
That's a great seller right
Yeah,
That's
there.
right.
Like,
it's
even if
awesome.
you lose this gecko, it will survive.
It
No
will
problem.
survive.
Nope. It happened with my toke.
Oh yeah.
My ex girlfriend lost my toke from like June until I didn't find that thing until probably like October or something. Thing was still kicking. I was like, okay, we're good. Put got her, put her back in the tank, and like she was a little skinny, but I was always like, because I knew she had to be somewhere in my apartment, so I started throwing crickets everywhere, all on the ground. Like, you're gonna get these. You're gonna be alive. I'm gonna find you one of these days. And I ended up finding her. She just came out of the blue, just chilling in my kitchen, like, what's up? Like, I was like, okay, all right, then, come on, let's go.
Yeah, they're way better than like Blaze Dactylus. If I had Blaze Dactylus, I had these slide front enclosures, very nice enclosures, but the Blaze Dactylus were so strong they could literally find ways to just like shimmy him open.
Oh damn.
And yeah,
Wow.
I'm not gonna claim they're smart by any stretch of the imagination, but like they found a way to like pull those just barely open where they could just slide out and take off if they got the good grip. So
Is that the Madagascar velvet gecko you're talking about?
mhm. Yep, the
Okay,
giant.
okay.
I multiple times while they were in those cages, I'd walk in and there'd be one on the ceiling. I was like, how in the world? Like, one day I finally just gave up and like threw him in there and sat there. I was like, show me what's going on. And sure enough, it just shimmied its way out and up it went. I'm like, oh, all right. No
Damn.
That's
more
cool.
sliding glass cage for you, but
That's
Oh
cool.
man. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm always looking around my room too. No, I have like every once in a blue moon a baby crested gecko get out or something. It'll bolt out of the egg box. I don't even chase them anymore. I'm just on
I guess it'll come
look around. Yeah, it will. I'll figure it out. But I just saw one like when I first came in here. They like one lives near the window, so he must bask. He lives in the curtains. I fold the curtains up, so he lives in like the folds of the blind things. And then at nighttime, he'll come out when the LEDs go on. He'll come up on rest on the windowsill. But I don't see him now. He was there an hour ago. But I wonder what he's doing. It's like right above where a table where I keep all my extra plants and everything. But he's healthy, dude. I don't even try to catch him anymore. He's living a good one, man. I'd like to say, I know it sounds crazy, but Like he doesn't move from this one section of this room. And it's been 2 or 3 months already. He like just stays in this one area. Rock out.
He's bug control.
Yeah,
There
absolutely,
you go.
absolutely, absolutely. God knows those crickets get out, man. They're like, I always call them the Olympians of the bug world, right? Like, I'll drop one in something, like I'll take one out with a tong and go to throw it in an enclosure or something. This thing will literally bounce right back out the same way it came. Like it's insane. It's insane. Especially this bandit crickets. They're like little Olympians, man.
Oh man,
Like
they're every. I was feeding pancake tortoises the other day, and I put a salad in there, and I watched banded crickets just like crawl out of the enclosure, and I'm like, what? Like, how'd you guys get in there? And I like went looking, and there's like a little like breeding colony in there. I was like, okay, none of this.
See?
You're coming out.
See? I find them everywhere. I don't feed them to my Leachianis. I open up the Leachianis enclosures, man. There's crickets on the bark in there. I'm like, where are you coming from? They just go wherever the hell they want to go. And I breed them too. I breed banded crickets. So I hate to say it, but they escape a lot more than I'd like to admit when they're tiny. And I feel like they're just bouncing around from enclosure to enclosure, not getting, I got like 200 semi-bio enclosures in here, and these things are just hopping around, crawling, finding their own way to wherever. Some are getting eaten, some are just thriving. I've taught my wife how to stomp on them, so when she sees them in the kitchen, get them.
Oh, we cats. We just hear them go like our cats make a sound, and we're like, all right, cricket. All right.
Hell yeah. Well, I got a cat and a dog. The dog just like plays doofy and like tries to play with them. The cat, done deal. She savages them. It's hilarious though.
Out of it. If we catch any, we have a pet yellow mud turtle that is just our dumpster. I'll be like, he hasn't had food today. Just give him some crickets and he can.
Awesome. Hell yeah.
So with breeding these, right? So when does breeding season start for? Well, at least for you, when does your breeding season start for them?
Sure. So I've never actually seen them breed. I need to make that clear. But all the eggs appear like right in the middle of wintertime.
In the middle of wintertime?
In the middle of wintertime. So I'm generally collecting eggs between December and March.
Interesting.
Now, December was the earliest I've ever gotten eggs. Generally, January is when they start popping up.
Okay.
So they're being laid, and these eggs are hard shelled, very hard shelled. You got to be careful not to crack them. I cracked a couple on my first go around because I was so excited. I saw that white and I went to scoop it, and I just excitedly crashed one into the other. But because of that hard shell, you need to keep the substrate very dry for incubation. So I actually will put them in suspended incubation media. I'll just throw it on top of dry sand, and then I'll put that in a cup, and then I'll put that cup in a larger incubation container, vermiculite, that every once in a while I might just spray down with some water.
Nice.
Not a lot, just a little spray down really quick. I'll actually do. Let me see if I have a lid around here. I'll actually take. These are the lids to my incubation containers. I'll put a round vent right in the middle there so that there's not too much moisture building up to where it's going to shatter the eggs. I have not had that happen with Haemophilus eggs. I've had it happen with other hard-shelled eggs, though. So I just mitigated early. Again, they're so easy that it's almost like easy to just set them up, forget them. Even with too much ventilation, they'll find a way to hatch.
That's awesome.
I think that's the beauty of them. You literally can just sit, forget it. You could probably incubate them on dry media, no humidity. I'm probably going to try that this year. Just take some eggs, go as dry as we can possibly go with no moisture, and see what happens. And the fun part is then you now have a 3 to 6 month incubation time. I'd say my average is about 4.5.
Okay.
Oh man.
Babies hatching or babies born in December, January are generally hatching late April, mid-May. So that's the biggest thing. Is it's a patience game where you're literally throwing them in there and just walking away for quite some time. Let's see.
What temps are you running? You just running them at your room temp, the ambience 80, whatever you keep your room at?
Yep, I literally just set the containers on top of my chuckwalla cages and forget about them.
Nice.
when I used to actually like put a meter in there when I was first playing around with them, I was trying to keep them like 82, 84.
Okay.
Nowadays, if the room goes down to 75 at night and 85 during the day, fine. I just kind of let it do its thing, and they seem to do just fine.
Awesome.
Again, they're so easy. Like I'd love for them to be harder, but they are made
Mhm.
for culture. Um, the no work gecko, in all honesty, they're perfect. They're perfect.
It's great to hear. You know, it's awesome to hear when we talk to breeders like you that almost, you know, they get excited about this the simplicity of keeping of these species, right? Because one of me and Jason and I's primary objectives with this podcast was to expose the hobby to these rare geckos that in most cases are actually easier to keep than these popular gateway geckos. You know, your
Mhm.
crested geckos, leopard geckos, these other geckos that are super popular, day geckos, things that take quite some effort into reproducing. Not that crested geckos are, but you know, in general, like a lot of these other, you know, more obscure species are actually easier to take care of husbandry wise, breeding wise, incubation wise than a lot of these other geckos that everybody has. It blows our minds all the time, Jason and I, that some of these geckos, as cool as these things are and as easy as you make it sound, and maybe it's just your luck, but you know, I genuinely take
Yeah.
your word for it that it's, you know, probably pretty simple. It's almost mind-boggling that everybody still bum rushes the same species. You walk to a reptile show and it's 3 species of geckos and maybe 3 different species of snakes. When there's animals like this out there that could be in your collection, it's awesome to hear. You know, not that it's, again, I'm sure your experience with them makes them a little more, you know, simpler to keep and thrive than it actually is. But it's nonetheless great to hear how easy something this cool is to keep when we have a population, a hobby that's, you know, obsessed with 1 or 2 species of geckos, man. You know.
Well, and maybe it's a popular opinion, maybe it's not. I used to love all that rare, like super
Mm.
delicate gecko species. Cerdadactylus consabrinus is my white whale. I got super awesome at killing Cerdadactylus consabrinus, and that's why I no longer take care of them. Um, I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna have these. I with my job being stressful and with the fact that I've gotten really into field herping for the past 7 years or so,
Mm.
I wanted a collection that I could literally say, you guys are fed, everything's good. I don't have to worry about you guys anymore. So geckos
Very
just fall
cool.
right in. I love Europlatus. I know that's one of the more delicate ones. If I ever had more time and a smaller collection, you can bet I would have Hankalai again. I love Hankalai.
Mm.
I got mine to adulthood, and then I moved to Kansas, where we've got a humidity of nothing
Uh,
and trying to mitigate that with our environment, it just did not go well. So I moved them onto another keeper and said one day. Actually, no, I
that's
moved the
awesome,
male
man.
onto. Moved the male onto one keeper. The female did die in full exposure.
Oh man.
That was the minute where I was like, okay, no, no more.
Yeah, that's a
We're getting
hard
rid
one.
of here.
Oh,
Well, and unfortunately, that's part of the hobby.
you
I
ain't
have no
lying.
I have no shame in mentioning it. I know I've mentioned quite a few mistakes this podcast, but that's because we all make them, and it's not a perfect system. You will
Oh yeah,
always
Absolutely.
have something go
yeah.
wrong, and that's why I like
Abs-
Homophilus because you can almost have nothing go wrong.
Well, speaking of that, now is there any issues like with them, like any kind of a stressor or any kind of health issues have you ever noticed with them?
Aside from that calcium crash I had, when, again, potentially going to a different brand, potentially having a compromised animal, I have not had an issue with Homophilus.
Do they get
Um,
those big old jowls when they get a lot of calcium in them?
They do,
Okay.
and that's I try to like wean off the calcium a little bit during those times. I don't want them to get too large and become too much of a problem. Um, but if you can manage that, again, it takes a bullet or a brick to kill these things. Um,
That's awesome.
I when I first moved here, I had mine in my basement where I have a lot of cooler weather animals, and I tried to just use more heat. and they were not breeding, and that was finally talked, and I was like, I got to move these upstairs. They were in suboptimal temps, I would say, even with added heat, no
Mhm.
issues whatsoever. They can withstand pretty much any environment you can give them within reason. So
Okay.
they're sturdy.
It's awesome. Awesome. Everybody out there listening, man, listen to this, re-listen to this. There is other species out there, man. Great, incredible, awesome species that you guys can manage, man. New keepers or the seasoned alike, man. You guys can, expand your horizon, man. Broaden your collection, look at something different, man. There's some awesome animals out there that are not above your capability, man. You guys can take care of these things.
Oh
And
yeah.
and and not to hijack the podcast or anything, but to jump on that point, uh, and I don't want to sound preachy, but uh, you're right. We have to expand our horizons. Enjoy the common geckos. They're here for a reason. They are popular for a reason, and they run
Hmm.
our industry financially. They
They
deserve to
do.
be there, but so do other species. Because
Hmm.
I can remember, I was saying at the beginning, the last Tinley I went to in 2016, it was like the year of the obscure gecko. I mean, I came home with Teratoscincus roberastrum, Toadora phrygmus. I got some extra ones for my colony at the time. Haemophilus, I got more Haemophilus. I got another Blazetodactylus. It was just like a dream come true to see all these cool geckos. I
Mm.
cannot find a Teratoscincus roberastrum anymore. Odura are gone practically. When Odura manilis at the time were $50 for a hatchling, and they've gone up in price, which some is good for some reasons,
Yeah.
and it's also a sign of maybe some negative reasons. Um,
Mm.
we need to. I think it'd be great if every keeper said it. You know what? That is a really weird gecko that's getting no attention. It looks cool. Let me give it a shot. I'm not saying upkeep your
Yes.
collections. I'm not saying dump your cresteds, dump your leopard geckos. Just find a way to enjoy it all and try to keep
Yes.
stuff
Yeah,
around.
just
Yes.
add to the collection.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
you don't
Yes.
have to, like you said, you don't have to get rid of all your Cresties, but throw something a little bit different in there. Like even like you said, you have Cresties, find something that works within those parameters that's not a Cresty. Or if you have leopard gecko, find something that works in those parameters that's not a leopard gecko. Like I said, Stropharis. You can do Stropharis, arboreal one, or if you're messing with Cresties, I have Cerdaclys nebulosa, Cerdaclys triatus. They're both pretty much almost room temp. Like my Cerdaclys triatus right now, the hottest it gets is like 77 in there, and at night it gets to 73. Said my buddy Jake was like, yeah, you put it between like during the warm season it's like 22 to 26, and then during the cold season it's like between like 20 and 22. So I was like, all right, cool, simple
Celsius.
setup. Yeah, Celsius. Yeah, sorry.
All right.
Yeah, which is, I mean, like I said, in Fahrenheit, it's like between your low end 72, your high end could be around like 77 to 80 degrees. You know,
Mm.
simple stuff. All you gotta do is just ask questions, talk to people,
Mm.
communicate. Get into these communities of all these different species of geckos. Like I said, no, I'm in like the rare gecko for the U.S.
Mhm.
Facebook groups. I'm talking to people in there. Like I said, talk to people in our Facebook group, talking to people on IG about certain things. Just go ahead, talk to people, find some things out, see if that works within your parameters with the geckos that you're already keeping. So you don't have to change much. Me, I like
Mm.
variety, so like my mind doesn't work where all right, I can only have this one particular set of parameters. I have all these different parameters because otherwise I'll start getting kind of bored. My mind starts
Mhm.
going different places. I need different stuff to keep me going. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Mm.
But I was gonna say, oh man, what was I about to say? Oh man, I totally lost my train of thought on that one. Uh, so like actually, no, I do want to get into because you said you were talking about colony, right?
Mhm.
Now, what brings you to that idea that you think you might be able to do that?
Um, I mostly just think that I'm trying to think of how I want to describe this. Um, well, number one, I should say other people have had colony success and done just fine.
Okay.
That's actually the biggest thing. But it does also just doesn't make sense from an ecological standpoint. They're living in tree barks together, trying to
Mm.
share a tree. Sometimes you got to go to the same good tree for all the food and the basking spots.
Hmm.
It doesn't make sense for it to be a truly territorial gecko, other than some sort of artificial problem that
Hmm.
I am the keeper is creating.
Okay.
Um, so I know one gentleman. I'm blanking on his name right now. Lon Dexler. I don't know if he's still keeping them, but he used to. He had a big colony of them. He just like I don't know how many males and females he had in there, but they seem to do just fine. Or sorry,
Awesome.
I think it was one male and multiple females,
Okay.
but they seem to have no problem. But trying to raise these guys together, that one female still no tail, and I used to keep them just in pairs, no problem whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be either it's a space thing, which I am always guilty of. I want to give the animals the space they need, but I also think sometimes like this is a gecko that lives in a tiny tree hollow together. I think this will be okay. Maybe it's not. I'm gonna try bumping them to an 18 by 18 by 24, like I said earlier, and let's see what happens next time. Um, so just try to weed out some variables and kind of see what we can figure out.
What you said about the one-on-one competition makes sense, though. I feel like a couple more, I've been thinking about it since you said it, that, one female looking at another female as direct competition almost seems like that'd be the issue. If there was a group of them, then they're not mammals, so I guess there can't necessarily be a pecking order per se, but you can't pinpoint one to be your threat if there's multiples, right? Like if that makes any sense.
Exactly.
It's but I believe again with everything that you've said, I think you're onto something for sure, man. Like you look at a tree and they're not just getting under the bark of a healthy tree. It has to be a rotten tree. How many rotten trees are there? How many rotten leaders are there on healthy trees? How many, it's we're not talking about a forest of dead rotten trees that they're just slipping under the bark, eating the bugs and beetles that are under the bark with them or crawling on the bark. They have to be congregating to a very specific set of trees, whether they're moving from tree to tree or doing something together. They're probably staying in these trees for a significant amount of time. Again, I've damn sure never been to Tanzania, but I can just I try to envision the environment and how something would work naturally, right? Like, and there's probably a lot of things on the ground that would eat them. There's probably snakes in these trees that would tag them. They have to live a very strategic life, right? And almost, fighting with the same sex, but then it wouldn't make sense for males. But then again, it would make sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense in an environment as harsh as it could be for any reptile in all actuality to really fight with your own species, if that makes sense. I don't know. I guess I could go on for hours about that. They're just thoughts. I don't know, but
Yeah, and
uh,
that to add more complexity to it, one of my original females, I think she's passed. I could be wrong. I sent my colony off a while back, and my original colony, when I started, I was kind of downsizing, and I was thinking about not having a collection for a little bit. When I wanted to come back, he hooked me back up with offspring, and it was.
awesome.
But I didn't get her back. She was aged, and I wanted her to just stay where she was. But the reason I bring her up is because this female had a giant scar on her side where it looked like another Homophilus had just ripped out a bunch of skin, a regen tail. She was missing like 2 or 3 toes. So there could be territoriality
Yeah.
regardless. I don't know what her life was like in Tanzania, but
Mm,
she came in. Look, that also maybe it was in the export process, being in some
yeah.
exporter's bag. I don't know, but that she's a case as well of something going on, and something we should
Mm.
play around with and kind of try to figure out
Yeah,
more.
absolutely. It's not wrong in this hobby to experiment. I think we've actually, on the contrary, gotten so caught up with not experimenting that we've stunted our growth, right? Like we people are so afraid to try new things because of what other people will think. I mean, you got to think outside the box sometimes for the better of these animals, right? Like we can't all just hop on a plane and go to our favorite species natural range. You got to be realistic. And a lot of these things, we don't have easy access to the information that we're looking for, right? So we have to, and I always say this, but use nature as our proxy, right? And give it give it our best, right? Give it as many options and possibilities as we can, and take away from it what we can. You know, we can't just keep living these simple-minded lives like we're an animal that's just going to do okay because it's in a box and it's getting food all day. Like you gotta think, you gotta experiment. You have to, you know, be willing to take the risk. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but you may lose an animal to tail, you may lose a toe, you know, but you're going to learn from that, I hope. And again, I could go on for hours about this. I get so caught up in thinking about all the possibilities of things and just the way the hobby goes. And I understand, right? I understand that it's a good thing to want the best for our animals, and it's a good thing to alleviate certain problems by never letting those situations arise, I guess. But at the end of the day, these animals in the wild are probably, I mean, I don't want to say better off than they are in captivity, but they're a different animal, right? And they're exposed to all these things. They're exposed to predation, they're exposed to starvation, they're exposed to drought, they're exposed to all of these harsh temperatures and weather drops in the wild that they never experience in captivity, right? So that and they survive. They survive for millions of years. They have been surviving, you know. And I almost feel that some of these hardships make for a stronger, more sound animal, right? Like in captivity, we're just cultivating weak animals. We breed weak animals. They you know, nature would have called. We reproduce things that, you know, and God only knows the things that we're breeding and reproducing that aren't visible, you know, to the naked eye, you know, that nature would have done away with. You know, we don't know these things. So I'm not preaching everybody to go and torment your animals by any type of means. I mean, it's not what I'm saying, but don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to miss a meal. Don't be afraid to feed on a Wednesday when you always feed on a Tuesday, or you know what I'm saying? I mean, we have to think more like nature, you know, in a sense, and not the breeder you idolize, you know. Eh.
Well, and I very much like to experiment with temperature, and I mean, let's just say safely. But
Yes.
I, I really think we keep a lot of our animals too warm, and that's why I would kind of be like, you know, take a look at your weather stations. If you're
Mm.
listening to this, you know, take a look at historical weather data from the country your animal comes from. You'd be surprised how many animals get so much
Mhm.
colder.
Oh yeah.
Now you got to understand their ecology too. You can't just throw an animal down at 50 degrees and go, well, it's 50 degrees at night there. It'll be fine. You might end up killing an animal, but you know, if you can understand your animal and give it those options, I think you're just building a stronger animal.
Yes,
I call it
I
buffalo
agree.
syndrome, where we basically take an animal, we put it in the perfect environment, and then we never give it the chance to have any sort of
Stresses.
mild stressors, something.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
got to work through and go, oh yeah, that's not a big deal, and it also can get the hormones pumping for breeding for some of these more difficult
Hmm.
species.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I encourage everybody to try, yeah, keep your animals a little lower temperature than normal. And
Oh
I'm
yeah,
not saying
definitely.
go extreme. My axolotls had ice in their tank one time. I'm not saying do that. I had a diamond python that I left the window open during a freak snowstorm, and there was snow on her cage the next morning. She was at 34 degrees, and she just came out and
Wow.
basked like normal. Again, maybe don't go that crazy, but I
Hmm.
say these examples just to say our animals are stronger than we think. Look up
Yes.
look up your animal's ecology. Think about what they can handle, and if you can do it safely, I think you should give it a shot.
Oh yeah,
Great
and definitely do it
advice.
like do this stuff in a controlled way. You know,
Hmm.
like I said, like with me, like when I do my cooling for most of my animals, sometimes I said I'm opening up all these windows, but then if it dips between like if it starts hitting that 60-degree mark, I have protocols in place. Like I have a smart heater, so I don't use like my regular AC unit for heating or anything like that. I'm in Arizona, that shit ain't happening. But I have like a little smart heater, right? So if it starts getting to like that 60 degrees, it kicks on and it'll bring it back up to like 65. It'll just make sure it stays around there, like I said. And then by the time the morning hits, all the lights come back on, and then they're gonna get back up to their normal temperatures. And then you just pay attention. Like, all right, how are you guys moving? Are you guys hungry? Are you just anything? Look at just observe your geckos, see what's going on. So that's just like what
Mm.
Dave was saying. Like you do this stuff in a controlled way, and you see what's going right, what's going wrong. But I was going to oh shit, I lost my damn train of thought again. Um, shit, I
Hey,
totally
I'm
forgot.
super
And
guilty of doing that all the time.
yeah, and
I'm
go
only
ahead, man.
32, and I always feel like I'm having like senior moments already.
Yeah, I'm 40. I'm about to be 41 next month, so I'm always at loss.
Well, I never get lost. I mean, not that there's two different types of people, but I don't write down questions. I just ask questions. I literally just don't know anything, so I ask everything, right? Like, but being that you talk about going herping a lot, have you ever thought about going to Tanzania? Have you ever explored the option of going out there and checking out some of these things, or any other species you keep, maybe?
No, and it's nothing to do with not wanting to go to Africa. I am just
Mm.
obsessed with the American Southwest. That is something I did not
Yeah,
anticipate wanting so much.
beautiful
Um,
country.
so the first time I was exposed to the desert, I was like, "Oh my God, this is the best!" And I can just,
Something, right?
being in Kansas, I'm only like 10 hours from the spot in New Mexico. I'll add 11 hours from West Texas. I mean, I haven't been to West Texas yet. That's on the bucket list. That's
Okay,
this
okay.
summer, hopefully. But I don't know. I like the idea of being able to just drive myself somewhere. All my tools are right there.
Yeah.
And then selfishly, if I get a hunting permit wherever I go, and if it's legal take, and I find a really cool animal, I'm like, I got to bring that back for the collection.
There you
uh,
go.
nice.
So
So
Have you ever
I
found? Have you
now
found?
go ahead, Ant. Go ahead, Ant.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just gonna ask. I was
No,
keep going about herping. Tell them. I just want. Have you
no.
found
This
any of our native species like Coleonyx or anything? Have you found any like cool geckos out here on your herping
oh,
ventures?
I found one Coleonyx in
Right.
California this year. It was so frustrating because it looked like it was perfect weather, and I get out there and it was just terrible.
Uh,
But it was super awesome because it was like a little praying mantis, like the way it was running across the road. I was like, "What was that?" So
awesome.
I got out and it was just a tailless Coleonyx like running across the road really quick.
Cool.
Uh, let's see, I think we found one in Arizona um, a couple years ago. I forget what species.
I wouldn't know myself. We had a guest on that had like all these different species, and to be completely honest with you and everyone else, I didn't know there was so many. It's like there's every little state has their own different Coleonyx. I was like, oh, okay, awesome.
And my problem is I hyperfixate on like certain animals, so then I have to
Mm,
have that experience with that species before I just
yeah.
absorb all the knowledge.
Yup.
Right
Yup.
now,
Yup.
I'm
Yup. Same
obsessed with
way.
like green rat snakes, Trans-Pecos rat snakes,
Mm,
montane rattlers. So like that's where all my information has gone to
awesome.
for those areas of
Awesome.
grouping. I'm sure once I get down there and
Yeah.
see a gecko I like, I'm gonna be like, oh my goodness, it's time to
You
list
have to have an
everything.
interest. If you're not interested,
That's
what are you
right.
going to look for? It's like, I mean, I'm not, there's plenty of cool things out there, but I'm not out looking for slugs and snails, like, I mean, they're cool. I'm sure someone knows everything about them. I don't, I'm going to look for what I like.
yeah.
I was really
That's
hoping to
awesome.
see a couple species in New Mexico this year, but from my understanding, I'm not an expert on New Mexico herping. The monsoons were not happening at that time of
Mm,
year, as expected, so it was not great for night herping and seeing some of those
mm,
animals. Um, but it was great for the daytime, great for other things. So
Oh yeah.
awesome, man. Awesome.
So I
You
did
remember your
remember my
question, Jay?
question. Yeah, yeah, I remember it now. Yeah, because actually, like you said, there some of the like that almost subtropical deciduous forest. What kind of like humidity levels are we looking for to maintain in these enclosures?
So I'm going to be honest with you. I have not looked at humidity in years, and it was mostly just learning that they don't react to it whatsoever. They have perfect
Okay,
Mm,
sheds in almost any single temperature range.
interesting.
Sorry, humidity range. Um, I just try to keep it to where I might spray them down 3 times a week for water. I don't leave standing water bowls. That's my
Okay.
philosophy. For geckos, that is.
Mhm.
Um, so long as it's dried out by morning, that's all I'm looking for. I don't want the substrate or coarse bark saturated with
okay.
water.
Yeah,
Uh,
makes sense.
And I mean
so
that heat should help evaporate most of that up in the daytime, anyways. Kind of
exactly.
like yeah, because that's I used to like when I had my toke, right? I would spray that thing down 3 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, when I right before I feed, spray, throw crickets in. The next few days, let it go, let it dry out. Just having those good old ups and downs of
Mhm.
spikes. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
And so long as
So,
your crickets and your feeders are gut loaded with all that juicy, juicy goodness for them, I'm sure they're getting plenty of water there as well.
oh yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, speaking of that, what kind of stuff do you like to use for your gut loads?
So I'm gonna be honest. My girlfriend, who has never touched a bug in her life, randomly decided that she thought dubia roaches and other feeder bugs were the coolest things in the world. So I don't do anything with them. And she has
Cool.
concocted her gut load that you know, maybe one day of the week it's carrots and sweet potato, and another day of the week it's a mix of for dubia roaches anyway. Let's give them some oranges. Let's give them some apple pieces. Let's give them celery. Really, if it's green or it's a fruit that isn't going to disintegrate and turn into a mush, we give it to them. We
Okay.
also, of
Awesome.
course, have some high calcium, cricket chow that we'll give to um, both the roaches and the crickets. Um, I want to say, maybe I'm wrong. Don't quote me on this. I want to say she's given eggshells to the dubia roaches before. I could be wrong. That's
I've
what I
heard of
get for
this
not taking
thing.
care of my feeder bugs. I hate feeder bugs. I get bored with them and do terrible jobs. So when she was like, "I love this," I was like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you."
It's
And
cool.
so,
Nice.
Very cool.
Oh yeah.
so
So,
if you have
what kind of
wiser
supplements
girlfriends,
are you
get them
using as well?
isopods, and then they'll take care of your feeder bugs. Sorry, sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
all right.
I was no, I was just gonna say what other supplements are you using besides that mineral?
I just use Mineral and then Necton vitamin supplementation.
Okay.
Um, so I've that is just a brand that the first time I tried it, it smelled good. It's a little pricey, but I just felt like it was what I was looking for. It didn't look like a brown slop that smelled bad. I mean, how do I phrase it? It almost, if you guys remember the Flintstones vitamins, it almost
Oh
smelled
yeah.
like those. And the anthropomorphizing part of me, I think, was like, I like that. So no, but it is really high quality stuff. So I'll mix that in with my calcium, and I'll supplement the mix together. I have a little powdered sugar shaker that I'll just put it all in
Okay.
and then
Nice.
dust. And so they're getting a varying amount every time I'm offering it.
Okay.
Cool. Hey, for the both
Uh,
of you guys, have you ever seen those shakers? I just saw this on Amazon, man, and it called me crazy, but it's a shaker, right? Looks like a mixing bottle, like a shaking bottle for like a protein shake or whatever. But you put your calcium in the bottom, and it has a little chamber. You throw your feeders in it, and you shake it, and all the extra powder and everything just goes right back into the bottom, and you close the door, and your bugs. You guys have seen those?
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
not seen
Oh,
that.
I not just saw the damn things, man. I don't know. I've been living in the Stone Age.
I think I've got one of the
Oh,
older prototypes, like whether or okay, prototype
so
is a joke.
cool. Yeah, I'll have one
Like
here
one of the older
Tuesday.
iterations.
Yeah. Send me the
Um,
link to that.
and
Yo,
actually,
coolest.
it's not a supplement, but I should mention I also dechlorinate all of my water for all of my animals. I don't
Me too. Yeah.
no living animal in my house gets chlorinated water.
Oh
It
yeah,
is
yeah.
just a which I guess I think most people know this, but I'd be surprised the number of herpers that go, "What do you mean you dechlorinate your water? Why?" You know, here's my philosophy. If I take an earthworm or an amphibian and I throw it in chlorinated water and it burns them, is it really good for our stomachs and our bodies?
Absolutely.
Is it going to be burning that up? Is that what causes stomach cancers? Is that what causes other kinds of? Okay, I feel like an
Absolutely.
anti-science lunatic by saying this, but that's just something that
That's a fact.
where a gecko that is 10 grams is not the same as a 200-pound man. It's so I dechlorinate for all of my reptiles, and that's something I feel pretty strongly about.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah,
it's
I
not a
use
Absolutely.
supplement, but it kind of
RO
fits in
water.
there.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. We got like I said, we got water stations everywhere because it's Arizona and they're all
Oh yeah.
RO. So it's like 30 cents for a gallon. Boom, boom, boom. Fill all my jugs up. Put them in the humidifier. Put it in my water pressure sprayer. Everything like that. So I understand
I
with
think
that
the
one.
big misconception is people think that if they add a dechlorinator to the water. It's getting rid of all the, the trace elements and stuff, but it's really not. It's just getting rid of the chlorine. It's not killing all the minerals and stuff. It's not like you're watering your plants with distilled water. There's still those trace elements in the water. You're just getting rid of the chlorine, man. And the chlorine is not good. And I don't care. I have 2 different certifications in fitness, man. Chlorine is not good for anything to ingest. Like it's like, it still blows my mind that they add fluoride and chlorine in this water. But it's just me going to go off on another rant that I'm not going to. But you're not doing any harm, guys, by dechlorinating the water. You are absolutely doing yourself a justice if you can't afford an RO system, or I get the distilled water, but it's not distilled water by adding dechlorinator to your water.
And I use a product called Amquel, not Amquel Plus. Amquel Plus is like a bomb for your water. It just destroys every nutritional part of it. Just regular Amquel, it's so safe. It's why I like it. If I do a water change on salamanders and I worry that I didn't get the dosage right, I'll just add a little bit more. It's fine. It's not like some of the others where it's just going to tank your water and destroy your water chemistry. So I'm basing that on the fact that I think it's safe to give to my reptiles, but it's instantaneous, and it's such a simple thing to do. And I don't know if I don't believe in water bowls for geckos. We can go on that tangent later if you want to. But for my snakes and anything that doesn't have a water bowl, I don't get that slime that you might get if you're just using regular city water with chlorine. It's actually just, I got mineral buildup, but I mean, like nothing else. So that to me is even a better thing, because your animals are drinking not water that you're, But anyways,
your amphibians are the best gauge there is. I keep frogs myself, a few different species of frogs, man, and like you obviously know how sensitive amphibians are to water, and anybody out there listening that keeps amphibians know how sensitive amphibians are to water. Like you said, like it's crystal clear that if this chlorinated water is and will kill your amphibians and real fast, you shouldn't be giving it to anything that we keep in captivity. I mean, it's really should be a no-brainer. But I'd love to hear your reason as to why you don't give water bowls. I do. So I got to hear why. What's up with that?
Well, I mean, mostly it was just, I'd fill the water bowls, and then bugs would get in there, even with a rock or a bio ball or something for the bugs to get out. They drown, and then it becomes a bacterial mess.
Absolutely.
And the more I thought about it, I was like, what gecko, with the exception of the couple kind of semi-aquatic animals that might be around a river or a pond, what gecko just has a puddle or a lake next to it that it just walks over and drinks out of? And they're mostly, I think, drinking rainwater as it comes down, or dew in the morning time, or something that's condensation. That's the word I'm looking for. So that's why I try to replicate that all my geckos across the board. Obviously, I just keep kind of desert or arid species now, so that's all I'm talking to. If you got tropical animals, you're misting all the time anyway. They're probably getting plenty of water. But for my arid animals, I'll just kind of quickly do like a spray down. I'll see an animal sort of drinking. I'm like, perfect. You saw the water. Close the tub up. Close the cage up. So that's my reason for it. It takes away that bacterial soup that can build up if you miss a water bowl.
I can vouch for it. Like I said, I use them in all of them, and I don't use them necessarily for drinking. I use them for ambient humidity. But you're absolutely correct. Like they are. I change water bowls every day in about 200 enclosures. Every day I'm changing them because of that. Crickets jump in there, they die. I'll see one in the morning on my way out to work. I can't go to work leaving that in there. I can't do it. So I'm constantly changing them. But in my case, in my situation, and guys, everybody's situation is a little different. So you have to, take that into consideration. And what one person doesn't make them wrong and doesn't make another right. You have to do what works for you. And the only way you're going to decide that is by observing your collection and the parameters within your collection yourself. I use water bowls again, like I said, for ambient humidity, and I went a long time, and I still miss, and I still spray for drinking purposes. Um, but I don't know, maybe a few years ago, I heard someone else try it. You know, they were having issues with some baby geckos and some stuck shed, and they're like, try a small. You know, my smaller geckos, I don't keep baby geckos hatchings. I don't keep them like a bio thing. I don't want them, any packaging or anything. So I just try to keep as little things, as few items in these enclosures as possible. So I was having issues with stuck shed, and I just tried the little 2-ounce deli cup with water for ambient humidity, and it seemed to do the trick for these species that I'm referencing. But you're absolutely right with they are something else that if you're not willing to spend the time, don't think about, because you cannot leave them for days. These animals won't drink stale water. I mean, they're not stupid anyway, and most of these species can tell stagnant water from fresh water way before you ever could, and so if you're not going to take care of it and add a water bowl, then I would advise you don't use them either. Continue misting for hydration and drinking purposes, and that's good to hear. I love, and again, guys, just because two people don't do the same thing in the hobby doesn't mean that we have to disagree. Doesn't mean we have to argue. Doesn't mean we have to hate each other.
That's
They're
right.
two minds coming together on two different techniques that both work in their own sense, in their own way. This is what good communication is. This is what good keeping is, guys. The hobby needs to start evolving more of. We need to start learning to understand instead of ruling with an iron fist, right? Like it's there's more than one way to skin a cat, and as long as everybody can communicate, and I say this time and time again, but what differentiates us from our primate cousins is not our opposable thumbs. It's our ability to communicate. We should be able to talk to fellow keepers and breeders alike, and ask questions and get answers, and not fight. You'd be surprised what you can learn by just simply asking a question. It's
Exactly right. And I also want to mention I don't have a giant gecko collection anymore. And back when I did have a giant gecko collection, it was still maybe like 20, 30, 40 tanks. It was never an absurd amount. So I could get away with just misting. If a keeper thinks that, oh, I need to do a water bowl, by all means. Like this is what works for me, my workload, and my animals. And also watch your animals. Like I did the same technique for my colony of alligator lizards, and I was shocked that when given the opportunity, they poor cats though. Okay, cats have water bowls. Cats, tortoises, and snakes all have water bowls. But no, I just lost my train of thought. So I was shocked that my alligator lizards, when given the opportunity, would absolutely drink out of a water bowl, even though they were being misted. They'd walk up, take a couple laps, and run off. I'm like, okay, you need a water bowl, by all means. Um,
Yeah.
so again, just observe your animals and kind of see what works.
absolutely. People get
Yeah, I
caught
think
up in the.
I said the only one that doesn't get a water bowl for me is like my Eurypletus. That's just there's no real there's not a whole lot of room on the bottom of that enclosure. It's all filled up with all kinds of different stuff. So I just spray the hell out of it
That's
most
right.
nights, just so like it'll lap up the water. I've seen it lap up the water. Like right when I sprayed on the leaves, it's licking the leaves, it's licking the wall. So it's like, all right, you're good. And then also, I mean, it gets the I put a fogger in there too, so there's more moisture in the air, so it gets it through its body as well. I was
Yeah.
going to ask you, uh, so are these on CITES or anything?
I need to look up their what CITES level they're at, but yes, they are no longer being imported.
Okay.
Just say I
They
don't
are
see them much.
Yeah, I
they're
was gonna
shut
say,
down.
when was the actual last import for these things?
Ooh, okay. So it happened kind of when I was taking over the hike for the hobby. I had just moved to Ohio to Kansas, started a new job, and I was so focused on getting that set up. I want to say it was 2017, 2018. It was,
Okay.
I think
It's
it was
fairly
something
recent.
that,
Yeah, not too long
um,
ago.
but yeah, they were $20 geckos, man. They were like, I mean, I asked somebody, I'm like, I want eight. They're like, can you send me 100? So, when I got my colony back, and or not sorry, when I got some offspring from my original colony back, um, I was stoked to be able to raise them up again, just to have them. But then I was also happy that when I went to St. Louis NARBC that year, or Schaumburg, whatever that one's
Mhm.
called.
I think it was
Um,
Schomburg, Because I think I
Yeah,
know the person that was actually selling them.
It's a hell of a
yeah.
show.
They were what was it? They were like $200 a piece for
Oh,
adults.
well, because I'm about to say, because yeah, well,
I
yeah, because for babies it was like $100, and then I think he said uh for sexed animals it was like 200. But
yeah,
yeah,
and this is not about money, but it was more about like, okay, there's a monetary value to these animals now. Maybe they'll
Mhm.
be taken seriously,
Yeah,
and we hate to say it that way, but I mean, if
it's a fact.
it's a fact, if they were useful enough and people were going to keep them around, all those $20 geckos that got imported would still be around, and
yeah,
they're certainly not, and we've seen it happen with too many gecko species that are now
Hmm.
gone. Um,
I look at it with those flying geckos. You know the flying geckos? I don't know what their
yeah, yeah.
scientific name is. We see them for like sale for $30, right? And I always said to myself, like, those people just treat them like they're just these throwaway animals. But if that animal was $150 to $200, which I think, and it could absolutely be worth, like, people would look at them totally different, man. Like,
yeah,
it's just,
yeah,
these low prices, and as sad as it is, we all know that those low price tags give these animals this almost dispensable tag, man.
yeah.
It's
Disposable animal.
sad, you know.
Yeah,
It's super sad. Look at the green iguanas, man. When we were kids, man. It's you're talking about one of the most complicated animals to take care of, the most expensive to provide for as far as lighting and a full grown male food wise and room. I mean, they were selling these things for $9.99 in 1985 and 1990 when I was a kid. Man, you could get one on sale for $10 at Petland discount, $10.
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, my favorite animal that I will say this, no, not ironically, not trying to be a hipster. One of my favorite animals I've ever kept was actually the Decay's brown snake, that little tiny garden snake you can find
They
everywhere.
live right. Oh, they live everywhere. I said they're all over my state.
They're all over. One night herping, we have not had this again. We got 110 of them on the road before we stopped
Holy
counting.
shit.
I've
Really,
never seen anything like it before. That was, anyways.
they're cool snake.
I Kansas used to let you have 5 of any non-protected species. You couldn't sell them. I learned that later after I accidentally sold some. But sorry. But you can keep 5, and I just had 5 in a little terrarium. They perched like a green tree python. They would come up and bask and just sit there. They'd take earthworms off tongs, and they got used to you. So you'd walk by the cage, and they'd come up and be like, "Hey, what are you doing, man? Are you gonna feed me?" Um, if that snake was from New Guinea and cost $400, it would be one of the most desirable animals out there.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
Oh, and I
absolutely.
should mention the ones out here. There's a population that's red, so I mean, like you have actual, not just brown, red, small. Same story though. It would be $400 for a good
Cool.
act. I think sometimes the price tag unfortunately makes what the animal's lifespan is
Absolutely.
will be.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
and we're seeing that right now with like Stenodactylus, right?
Yep.
You're
Hmm.
they're these 20 $30 animals, and but now you're starting to see a lot of these like YouTubers and all them starting to try to promote them. So now you're starting to see that price start to go up and up, which is cool. Like
Hmm.
I'm down with it. Like I like Stenodactylus. Um, but I mean, just go ahead and give it a shot. That's what I want. Just tell people, give it a shot. Go ahead, try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? Nope. But don't make it a disposable animal. Just say, hey, I might know somebody else that might be able to take care of this better than I could, or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like I said we're coming up close to the end right now, and you got any final questions?
Damn. I didn't know we were
Yeah.
coming to the end. I wanted to go all into the other geckos you keep. What are those other species of geckos you keep? You keep a different species of leopard gecko. I was looking at your Instagram page. What are those? What are they, real quick? Just for everyone listening.
Sure. I keep Hardwicki. The
Okay, that's what they are.
I always screw up the common name. I believe
Middle
it's East
Eastern or
Indian,
something? East
but I
Indian. East Indian. That's it. It's the Indian East Indian something.
I
Yeah,
always
that
swap.
is it. Eastern. All right.
Yeah,
All
I
right, but
always swap
nonetheless,
them and Fuscus back and forth on the common name. I always screw that up. Then I also keep Angramayu, the Iranian leopard geckos. I've got the Ilaram
Iranians.
animals. So I hatched Hardwicki this year.
Super
Hatched
cool.
Angramayu this year. I got a couple pet crested geckos. I mean,
Hmm.
I'll always love crested geckos. Let's see. Then I've got a pair of lychees. I'm actually going to move them on. I've had the male for 14 years now.
Damn.
Damn.
I've got a friend whose wife just retired and has been going gangbusters with New Caledonian stuff. So I'm just gonna
Awesome.
send them, let them enjoy it.
Awesome.
Uh, so that's actually it
So
for geckos these days.
with those hard wikis, or not the hard wikis, the other ones, the Iranian ones.
Yeah.
Now, can you are you able to breed those into leopard geckos, like just for like outcrossing some certain things? Because I know people use like the hard wikis to outcross certain stuff. Can you do
I
that
didn't know that.
with the other geckos as well?
Uh, I've heard conflicting reports that some say that the Angermayu are kind of an origination of part of the German giant leopard
Oh, okay.
geckos.
Hmm.
Sorry, German giants, bearded dragons, just the giant lion leopard
Okay.
geckos.
Gotcha.
But then I've heard other reports that said that they tried it and the lab results did in a lot of babies that didn't make it.
Really?
So I wish I knew the answer to that one for you. Um, I'm just keeping them as Angry Mayu. The
Okay.
really lanky, long ones. They're just,
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're just an impressive beast.
Are you enjoying them? You enjoy keeping them?
Yeah, that's one I do want to put on a bio.
Yeah.
Actually, I think there's
Cool.
some. I open up the tub and they literally just come looking at me like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Unlike the hard wiki that, some animals are rack animals. That's the hard
Hmm.
wiki.
Okay.
I think the Anger Mayu will actually be able to display. Oh, I forgot my Chinese cave geckos, my Goniosaurus hanadensis.
There you go. I just got some myself. I just got a couple, three of them.
I always loved them. I bred a crap ton of them back in the day.
Really?
And that was also when they were fairly cheap imports and they
Hmm.
weren't very popular compared to the other ones. We had all the Japanese
Yeah.
animals.
Yeah.
Um, and then
Japanese
again,
skyrocketed.
oh
Man.
my goodness, I couldn't believe it. I'm just happy to have them back.
Yeah.
I miss some of my animals. I had some screamers. One that was almost like purple. Um,
Really?
if I had a picture of it, if I find a picture, I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah. Please.
Oh
But
yeah.
I haven't seen one like that since.
So I have a question. Since you've bred them, this question is kind of a selfish question, but I got three of them now, right?
Mhm.
Now they're still too young to sex. I bought the first two as a pair. I'm still blown away with how this person knows, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But two of them are like this crazy orangish goldish color, right? Like it's almost, if you put a light on it, it would blind you. They're so saturated. I just got a
Okay.
third one the other day. There is not the faintest hue of yellow on this thing at all. It is all black and white bands. What's up with that? Is it going to develop it or
I don't know because I had the same thing. I had some animals
see?
that were very
I couldn't
they were
find any information.
I some people say it's a difference between mainland and the Hainan Island animals.
Really?
Or God, I'm screwing all my information up. It's so outdated. But I don't have an answer for you. But there was a lot
Hmm.
of phenotypic
All
plasticity
right.
on them. I
I
had
asked someone
some that
else
were
too. I mean, that's what he said. My buddy was like, he breeds them, and he was like, I don't really know. He think people were trying to line breed them to see what it was, and it just they randomly just pop up. And I literally have one that is black and white, like the bands on his body are as white as the bands on his tail. There's not even a hue of yellow, and the other ones, like I said, are like gold. Like
that's
it's
interesting.
curious. I can't find any information on it. I Googled it for the last 2, 3 days because I figured when it came, I just got it a couple days ago. When it came, I was like, it's probably something to do with, shipping. Maybe she's just fired down or she's not fired up or, because I've never kept them before.
And these
And
are Hainanensis.
yeah, yeah, yeah. She's not, she's black and white.
Yeah, I had some that were very much that
All right.
the black and kind of like background grayish purple color,
Yeah.
and then like white bands. And then I had
Mm-hmm.
some that were like a very very slight cream yellow, and then I had one that was like it was like orange gold with big
Mm-hmm.
spots of those little micro spots on it,
Yeah.
and that almost again when almost purple. I'm not saying that you're gonna look at a color wheel and go, oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
purple, but it had that tinge to it.
Oh
So
yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah.
I figured I'd ask, Like I said, I'm always trying to learn. I'm always asking. I'd
Yeah,
never lie and say I got the answers to everything. I'm always looking for someone that could maybe help point me in the right direction. But that's cool. Something to look forward to, I guess. Something to work with. Definitely not claiming it's a more for anything special, but I'm good. I'm glad, almost glad to know that other people have seen it because I'm super, like I said, super curious and how they could be totally different ends of the spectrum. I mean, it's white, but huh,
and I've
cool.
had
How do you like keeping those?
I love
Oh,
them. I
sorry to cut
mean,
you off.
oh no, you're fine. I was gonna say I've had some that were beautiful gold turn that white
Yeah.
color. So I mean, I still don't understand that
Oh,
either. Um,
hmm.
I love them. They're easy.
Nah.
I mean, you do have to upkeep that humidity. I mean, that is one where like
Mm,
I put one in a critter keeper with a covered lid once because like I had so many hatch one year. I was like,
mm-hmm.
ooh, I'll make use of this. It did not hold enough humidity, and that thing
Really?
12 hours desiccated. I saved it, give it some
Damn.
Pedialyte soak, and mist it down. It's fine,
That's
but
fast though.
it looked
Um,
really bad after only a short period of time.
You're not using
Um,
UVB on them or anything, right? Like you're not putting UVB on those, are you? Yeah. See,
nope,
because
I
someone
don't even.
told me to, and I'm like in my head, I'm like, dude, I don't see them. Like they don't come out unless I go looking for
No.
them. What sense does it make for me to put UVB on these things? So that's like the one species I was actually referring to earlier that I just can't wrap my head around doing it because I that
I kept my Hardwickie in a situation where I tried to see if they would come out and bask if given
mm,
opportunities. I think they're the same as the Hainanensis. They're just very shy geckos
really.
that want to be under the leaf litter,
Mm-hmm,
underneath bark, and be left alone. Unlike a
mm,
Mangor Mayu, I know it's a different genus, but just so bold, it just wants to be out
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think maybe some LEDs or something. Like especially if you can do because that I think that's a great candidate for maybe some bioactive stuff. So you get some LEDs to grow plants in there and stuff like that. I
no,
think that'd be dope.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And then
think
you
they'd be
still get the
phenomenal.
lights and you get that they still get their circadian rhythms with the LEDs. It doesn't have to be UVB. You know?
Sure.
So I was going to ask you, what resources or communities would you recommend for the keepers of the Tanzanian velvet geckos? Like, where should they go and look for answers or information?
There's a group on Facebook, Hamophilus and Placidactylus Keepers. Um, a fair thing. I did leave a lot of Facebook reptile groups. There were so many at one point, so
Oh
I
yeah,
don't remember which ones I'm still in anymore. Nothing against them. Sorry. um, but I would look up. I think just always using Google Scholar, Google Maps, um, taking a look at what information you can find there and applying their natural ecology to your husbandry. Um,
okay,
Utilize the rare gecko group. You find another keeper with them at a show, talk to them. Just,
Mm,
I still think Google Scholar, Google Maps, though, you cannot go wrong.
yeah,
Taking a look at their habitat, trying to find papers on them, and then doing your best. And just Googling weather data. I mean, I say that for any species, but
oh yeah, definitely. We say that all the time too. I'm like,
mhm.
anytime I get a new species, I look it up, put it on my phone, the little weather app. Boom. Now I can kind of gauge where they should be. Even though, like I said,
hell yeah.
like my Cerdodactylus, like I said, even they're from India, right? India's pretty warm, but they're also in the forest where it's getting covered. That sun's getting covered by all those branches and leaves, so it's not 90 some degrees in there. It could be in the high 70s, low 80s. But
Exactly.
people, you got to think a little outside the box with this stuff. Um,
Absolutely. You'll be a better keeper for it every time.
yeah, and then also you can also use academia.edu.
Oh,
I
yes.
did actually get a few papers for Homophilus on there. Um, and usually they'll send me stuff because I was looking for a Cerdodactylus, and then once I was like, oh, I'm getting this, so now I typed that in there. I've only got like maybe two papers for them for Homophilus, but for like Cerdodactylus, I get stuff daily. Just new
Okay.
because new species are always getting discovered in the Cerdodactylus genus. It's
Sure.
crazy. But so and you got one more? Any questions before I ask my last one?
Yeah, what the hell is this now? Well, I mean, I do, but I want to ask just about. Is there any books? Have you found any books, like paperback books on the species, or anything that would? No.
No. I mean, you'll find some field guides that'll have some
Yeah.
information. I mean, a
There's
blurb
a
that
I think
big.
there's like a there is a book, but it's in a different language. So
Oh,
don't know if
okay.
that'll help. But I
You could
saw it
barely
was like
speak
on
English.
like I think it was like the uh the European Amazon that I found it on. But like I said, it's in a totally different language, so I was like, this is not going to help me out too much.
Well, if you can translate, I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, might as well.
All right. So my closing question, I guess my closing question will be, if you were at a table at a show and you had to give a new keeper a pitch on why to keep these geckos versus a day gecko, what would your pitch be to keep these geckos? Why should someone choose a Tanzanian velvet gecko as a pet?
They're bold. When you pick them up or go in their enclosure, they scream like a maniac. They look like bulldogs, and they're indestructible.
Awesome.
I love all that right there.
Great.
Like
Awesome.
I said, I don't hold my geckos like that, so I don't even care if they bite. That's fine. They
Well, they
scream.
come
That's
out of
fine.
the
I got
egg.
pterodactylists. They'll go try to one up each other. That's perfectly fine. I'm
I
good.
love it. I love the noises. And I think the coolest part about keeping geckos is the vocalization. I love geckos and frogs and things that make noise. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
was at. Oh, sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was at the reptile talks in May, and
Oh,
one
nice.
hatched while I was gone, and my girlfriend sent me a picture of it and went, "I don't know what to do. It's screaming." They come out of the egg screaming and
That's
salivating, and they're ready to
awesome.
go. But
That's cool.
Oh man. So yeah, my closing question, like I asked everybody is, what has been your biggest failures in this hobby, and what have you actually learned from it?
my biggest failure, underestimating what troubles my animals will get into. Well, I mean, this is the one that hurts the most. I had Odura Castlenowie. I loved those things, and my female, for whatever reason, tried to crawl through a hole in cork bark that was too small for her. She
Mm,
got, she was gravid. She got stuck right underneath the basking spot.
Oh,
Um,
mm,
I used to very much have that attitude of, well, animals in the wild have to experience this, and they'll figure it out. Take that mentality and dial it back a little bit. It's true,
mm.
but in captivity, you know, in the wild, that animal would have died anyway. So in captivity,
Yeah,
we have to go
yeah,
through that stuff and say, all
yeah.
right, we're not in the forest of Australia.
Play it safe. Yeah.
I need to play it safe with some things.
Mm,
That has been my biggest problem is having that mindset to a fault.
mm.
all right. Yeah. Well, I said, David, it was definitely a pleasure to have you on here, man.
Complete
Where
pleasure, man.
yeah, where can everybody find you at?
You can find my Instagram, Kelly Herpetological. It's Kelly underscore Herpetological. Um, I have a Facebook. It's pretty boring. Instagram is where all my pictures will be, and it's all herps all the time.
Nice.
So I'd go there.
All
Are
right.
you selling any animals? Are you on Morph Market at all?
Oh yes, I am on Morph Market under the same name, Kelly Herpetological. I will say, selling Homophilus, they go within a day every time I posted them up there. So I say that
Yes, they
only
do.
because there's nothing there right now, but I do
Okay.
post animals for sale.
Nice,
Awesome.
nice. Definitely. All right. So just stay on real quick after I stop the recording,
Mhm.
and then we'll get everything going. All right. All right. So go ahead, click off.
Thanks for listening, guys.